Hi, everyone, and welcome to Founded on Purpose. I'm your host, Katie McBratney. Each episode, we have a guest sit in a chair and answer the same 8 questions. They might be a founder, funder, or a movement maker, but every time, it's a great conversation. And today, I'm so excited to represent the Midwest and all the overlooked talent that we brush off so easily as flyover. Mina Raver is joining us. She is personally on a mission to preserve cognitive diversity as the founder and CEO of BetterCEO. I find she's the perfect blend of scientist and creator, empath, and decision maker, and she's a whole heck of a lot of fun to talk to. Mina, welcome to the show.
I'm probably blushing after that intro. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you know the format, so are you ready just to dive in and start at the start with question 1?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So in one word, what's your purpose?
Purpose. Construct.
Okay, break that down for us.
Okay, I'm cheating a little bit because you could say to construct or...
okay, we'll allow it. We will allow.
Okay. So to construct, I love to make things, to see things go from ideas to reality. And I think that the ability to do that on a physical scale and on a cognitive or systemic scale is the defining feature of humanity. And so anytime I see a construct, those things that brush up against like physical, natural realities so closely that we can't necessarily pull them apart without really deep thinking, I'm here to identify those, and I love to reconstruct those all the time.
How does that tie into your work, right? Before we started recording, you were talking about your life's mission, not just your company's mission, but like your purpose on the planet. So how do those two things weave together?
I think the red thread between them is probably perception. If we are all perceiving on a line or in an industrial way, we're missing out on opportunities to reconceive, reperceive, and reconstruct systems to our benefit. So preserving cognitive diversity is about preserving perception and also ideation and problem solving, as many opportunities to really define solutions and to even identify and define problems as possible. I think that's the way forward for, not to sound weird, but the way forward for our species.
It doesn't sound weird at all. We are not afraid of getting deep and getting into complex and nuanced and really meaningful topics here. And on that, for our audience and for me, can you tell us more about what cognitive diversity means in both like a categoric level, but also like in practice? Like, what does that practically mean on an everyday basis?
Sure. Well, you probably experience cognitive diversity most commonly or most identifiably in arguments. You know, is this a 6 or is it a 9 kind of thing? It's the way that we perceive things. And ultimately, cognition, the way that we perceive and break down and act on information is on a spectrum. So everybody has a fingerprint of their own cognition. Through industrialization, we really kind of streamlined a bell curve of employable or deployable cognition. And as we kind of move away from this industrial and more into a creative and technologically driven world, we're seeing more of that spectrum re-arise. A lot of it is identifiable. It's so far away from that deployable industrial cognition that we can diagnose it. We can call it ADHD. We can call it autism spectrum. We can call it anxiety. But ultimately, it's just a degree of deviation from that centralized, deployable, industrial cognitive model.
I feel like you could give a TED Talk or like drop into a grad school class at any moment and teach on this, which is a gift. And it also shows like your deep familiarity with not just the space you're solving in, but also the communication element of it, of helping people understand and become aware of cognitive diversity. We all think differently. We experience the world differently, perception, like you brought up. And it's so cool to see those come together, especially given like this is not your first time as a founder. You've been an entrepreneur for a while, but this is your first time building a scalable tech company that's tackling this problem near and dear to your heart. What's that experience been like so far?
Elating, I think, is the best term. People keep asking me, like, what's your definition for success? And this is it. Things are moving. I'm around other creative people. We're all bringing things into the world that have never existed before, which I guess you could say nascence is one of my favorite words, seeing new things emerge and evolve. And I mean, it's hard too, right? Like I started growing. My company started growing faster than I was expecting it to. Some of my own limiting beliefs got in the way of my planning. And, now I'm in a little bit of a crunch. But the drive to continue to see this grow is so strong and liberating that the problems that I'll have to, or that I'm facing right now in continuing to do it, it's like a blip on the map. I almost don't even have to confront directly the limiting beliefs, because the drive to continue to see this grow is so great that I'll do anything, including face off with myself, to be the founder that has to, or that is capable of continuing to see this come to life. So it's wild. It's really kind of meta.
You'll move your family from South Dakota to Atlanta to do Techstars because nothing is going to get in your way.
Exactly.
It's awesome. And it's why you had to be Founded on Purpose, because it's very clear that's absolutely not just like what led you to lead the company or to create the company, but to build it, right? To act on that purpose to construct. With that said, what has been your most recent win? And you can interpret that win in whatever way. It could be professional, it could be personal, it could be both, it could be neither.
My most recent win, actually, I told you just before this, I was in therapy right before we started. And
we love therapy on the pod.
I know. And like for me, I have a habit of deprioritizing my needs and health. Anyone who has been through any kind of trauma, that it's really hard to come out of it. But one of the strengths that we gain tends to be dissociation. And I think I lean on dissociating to get through hard things, probably too much. That might not change, but it's also important, if I'm going to use that as a strength, to also be able to get help to reset. So I'm not constantly in that state. It's a strength if you can leverage it. It is not if you're dependent. And so that's kind of like my recent win, is one more aspect of self-mastery.
I feel like my wheels are turning on how that might apply to my own life. So one, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for shouting out therapy. I swear it's just a matter of time before we've got a therapy startup that's sponsoring the pod. And also it shows the complexity of not just founder life, but life, right? We're all trying to do our best, and every day is another opportunity to do that. It also makes me think about what you said towards the beginning of the conversation about perception, saying this can be a strength, this can be unhelpful, and I can be the person who decides. That's huge. That's so profound. And you're just like, yeah, little big epiphany, just dropping it like it's common sense. So thank you. It was a gem.
Glad to hear it. I hope it's helpful.
This is a question that I find particularly fascinating to ask you, given what you're building. So before I ask the next question, please tell us a little bit about Better CEO, because of course we'll have a description in the show notes and things like that. But I think that that'll provide some really helpful context for the question I'm about to ask you.
Gotcha. So BetterCEO is currently it's a productivity and performance co-pilot for small business owners with ADHD. That is a space very close to me. I was diagnosed with ADHD, autism, and synesthesia at 6 years old. And so it's been a lifetime of trying to maximize my strengths without changing myself. I was a coach who helped other people with that for a long time and realized that coaching wasn't going to have the kind of impact that I wanted. So I started building BetterCEO. It integrates with other software and helps leverage the latest research in neuroscience, learning modalities, and AI to learn the individual and create customized productivity dashboards for that individual while also preserving the organization's data continuity.
Not a small task. So thank you. I think it's really important to ground us in what you're building, because I'm about to ask you, what's the single biggest missed opportunity in this field?
The single biggest missed opportunity in this field is taking responsibility for building software that changes instead of expecting people to change for software. If we are going to say that we're building tools to help, people be more productive or save money or whatever else, that really just help us organize information and not necessarily act on the information in front of us, we're not only missing out on a major opportunity, but we're failing our users. We're asking them to do a lot more than they really should have to. And the trade-off, what we lose when we make our users conform to our tool, our way, is worth so much more than than pretty much anything if you go back to my initial philosophy. But yeah, that's the single biggest missed opportunity is.
It just makes me think of all the abandoned productivity tools that I feel like every single person I know, and certainly every single founder or builder, right, has tried. And not because we're the problem, but because we're trying to match something that meets our unique needs, which I didn't realize, I knew everybody's different. Everybody thinks differently, of course. I think that that's like an inarguable fact if you are a human on the planet and have interacted with more than one other person. And yet, it was really helpful for me to understand it's a cognitive difference. And the tools are mapping to one kind of cognition, right? And so for me, I've tried tons of productivity tools and I'm super productive, I think, but always trying to be better, right? And trying to, your point, the self-mastery. And I just think about how every single person I know is like, okay, here's what I've got. I cobbled together a Notion second brain, but then I use AI to send myself notifications. And so people are almost like Frankensteining things together instead of the tech world, the business world saying that's a massive opportunity in what is obviously a saturated market to build differently, not just more.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's the opportunity to do it is brand new, right? The concepts around cognition and learning are so outdated. And we're just now getting new insights and new research into learning and cognition. So there's that. But also that AI component is just really starting to emerge. It's just now becoming financially accessible to build with it. Mm-hmm. So now is the first time it's really been possible to create tools that learn about you and then can also alter their interface to suit you.
Okay, so you're right. I shouldn't just blame all of the companies that have been putting out more things that don't work for me. It's not entirely their fault. So on that thread, I was a little bit wrong there. When was the last time you were wrong?
Oh, a lot. I'm getting better and better at being wrong quickly. I think the last time, you know what, I just actually hired someone, and I hired her because she's frankly better than me at everything in her field. She's a marketer and is also bridging into being my executive assistant. She just is more than I could have hoped for. And she started out of the gate going, hey, you're doing YouTube. You might as well also have a podcast. And my first thought was, that takes so much time. Because I've done that before. It takes so much time. And even though I'm a cognitive specialist, even though I know that what takes a lot of time for me might not take a lot of time for her, it took me almost 2 weeks for that to click and go, hey, if you really want to do this much, I trust your judgment. She had it done in about 4 hours.
I love it. Like the power of a good team, and also the humility and self-awareness to say, like, I'm not the best at this and I don't need to be, but I need the person who is. It's freeing in a way.
So much.
Okay,
so.
we're actually halfway done, which is shocking. Like time is flying, and I could talk to you forever. Again, another theme on the podcast. But for question 5, I'm really interested to hear. You're somebody who's very committed to building in alignment with your values, in alignment with your philosophy, in support of people. This can be taken as serious or as silly of an answer, whichever one you decide to take it. But what's a hill you would die on?
Ooh. So I'm kind of an incendiary person, so there are more of those than there probably should be.
You have conviction. Conviction's a good thing.
Specifically this one, it is around diagnosis. I think that, prior to industrialization, there was no diagnosis. And so now with the neurodivergence and the liberating aspects of being diagnosed, helping creatives and engineers and all of these people who make things, giving them some understanding into why they've always been different. There's more and more dependence on diagnosis. And it's my belief that we have come far enough. We know now that these things can have names, but we should be constructing systems, tools, interactions, and bases that are so plastic and so interactional that anyone can operate them to be part of our social whole without having to have diagnoses or without having to be far enough away from that central industrial cognitive model that they need a diagnosis. They're going to be different in some way, even if they can conform to this thing. It's just like when they had this. So who did the perfect measurements for a woman? And then they went out and actually tried to find that person, and she doesn't exist.
Right.
The perfect standards for industrial cognition doesn't exist either. So I think that we should be building things as plastic and stable but movable as possible to preserve as much cognitive diversity as possible. And the best way to do that is to not have to label or identify deviations in any degree.
That makes me think about accessibility, ability, disability. And, as humans, we need some level of categorization. It's how our brains work and things like that. And to your point, sometimes we do it to a harmful degree or an unhelpful degree. In what way do these cognitive differences either interact with or overlap with or connect with accessibility and inclusivity when it comes to ability?
Well, the Americans with Disability Act has a very well-defined definition for this. And I think a lot of corporations are starting to bump into that more and more as, rigid systems that may not even be their fault. but are definitely their time to respond to you, or they're becoming more and more prevalent. But for me, I guess if you build with everyone in mind, you don't have to worry about it as much, right? Like there's no excuse. Ramps don't take up more space than stairs in almost any venue, in any situation. We should be building for ramps.
You know who else uses ramps? People with strollers, people carrying heavy bags. Like, it's this rigidity of diagnosis and labeling, right? That has created limits in innovation.
Every single one of those limits has a social history. Why don't we care about building for people carrying heavy bags? Well, they're probably laborers, and laborers are second class. Why aren't we building for strollers? Because women should be accompanied and men should be able to lift it for them. Why aren't we building for wheelchairs? Well, we have a really, really uncomfortable history with sanitariums and how we've treated people with physical and cognitive differences, perceived or otherwise. And so there's no way to talk about how we have limited accessibility without talking about every single social government discussion that has happened where a decision has been made to limit accessibility in order to maintain a social hierarchy that does not benefit the majority.
It all comes back to systems and changing systems that artificially limit outcomes and potential. It's thank you for touching on that. I think that's an important part of your work and your leadership and who you are as a person that is not worth glossing over, and definitely worth a deeper dive, right? And other places that where you can again teach a master's class or give somebody like the best list of recommendations to be up to speed and stay up to speed on what's happening in those space. But now that I mentioned speed, I'm going to go to a different area of cognition. And I know there's a lot of brain science around this. There's a lot of behavioral evidence. So we can get real nerdy if we want. But first, I want to know, how do you play? We know it's important for human development in life, but what does play look like for you?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I have 3 major outlets for play. I have 3 little kids, and they are, in many ways, they are my muses. They keep me young. They keep me mentally fit. And I had a professor once that used the term morally caffeinated.
That's a great. I've never heard that. That is so good.
The what is it? Ethics and AI class out of Stanford. Check that out because it is open to the public. But he led that class, and that was the term that he used, was morally caffeinated, and that my children absolutely do that for me. And in many ways, so does my spouse, with whom I play video games pretty much every single day. That's our unwind time, is we hang out on the couch after the babies go to bed and play video games. Currently, Alan Wake 2. If you played Alan Wake 1, but you haven't played 2, they're almost completely different games.
I'm married to a gamer, and I like different kinds of games. But yesterday, actually, also, I have a kid, and yesterday, my spouse and my kid were doing the New York Times spelling bee together, and I was like, this is the best manifestation of screen time ever. Please keep spelling words, and also try idyllic.
That's fantastic. All 3 of mine have learned how to game playing RPGs. Old 90s Super Nintendo RPGs. We get together as a family and everybody plays out their roles, so everybody has things that they read. And
love it. We've got some Dungeons and Dragons game master guides and things around the Dungeon Master. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get so much flack for using the wrong D&D lingo if he listens to the podcast. But okay, so those are your 3 outlets for play.
Those are 2. The last one, number 3, is I'm a tinkerer. And that is really what led me into being a founder. So I do have a history with starting companies, but I usually put up a little LLC or S Corp, and I use the money that I make to fund research. So the first one was around cognitive disabilities and deterioration. So I was learning about something I called multisensory stimulation, working with individuals and their doctors to see if cascades of like touch and smell and sound sensation improved their healthcare outcomes. So I set up shop during the day and sold candies and perfumes. And by evening, I was helping people, take better care or take in treatments for, say, Parkinson's.
So you've always been working with purpose, and it's certainly been an anchor of your entrepreneurial journey. Did you know it at the time? Have you always known this?
Well, I actually started my first company at 10. My mother was not able to work, and she shortly after actually left the family, and my stepdad was really, really sick and couldn't work. And so to keep my family together, I sold origami to my classmates to raise money to buy a lawnmower. And then that summer I started a lawn mowing company and moved my family out of the projects for the first time. It came so naturally that I was really excited once I finally turned 18 and got my first job at a co-op. And I got another job as an assistant editor, and I left that job to the tune of never going to do that again. When my department head told me after I turned in my resignation, he came in and goes, I've always been a little bit intimidated by you. And I said, good. You should be. And there are more of us coming. And I've never been back to corporate.
Hey, we love a nonlinear career. I mean, we love a nonlinear life. Like that is something that I will hang my hat on. And I can say just my personal take as somebody who hasn't neatly fit into boxes is it's a lot more fun. And I get it. It works for some people, like being a specialist and being, in a certain linear path works for some people, but I'm here for I'm here for a plot twist. I'm here for a creative pivot that makes absolute sense, even if at the time people are like, what? Oh my gosh, so origami for the lawnmower, then corporate, then go, oh my God. Okay, I'm going to go into a deep dive and be like, what different hats have you worn? Because it sounds like almost every.
Quite a few. And it always comes back to researcher, tinkerer. I guess the difference between a researcher and a tinkerer is function. Researchers want information for the sake of information, and you publish on it. And, under the best case scenarios, you get your accolades. Tinkerers go through the same rigor, but then they want to see their findings work. And I think that essentially is the difference. So I'm constantly just driven to learn new things and to see things not just as they are, but as they could be. So I say tinkerer because, information, knowledge, if it's not functional, it's just a flex.
Put that on a t-shirt. BetterCEO merch coming next. Okay, time is flying. So I'm going to take us back to the planned questions. We only have 2 left. I know. Time flies when you're having fun, I think. That was so corny, but I'm going to leave it in. I'm leaving it in. I'm in charge of the edit. I'm leaving in the corny. Okay, how do you, as somebody who is probably privy to receiving a lot of advice, how do you navigate what advice to take and what to hear and leave?
So this is actually one of the superpowers of synesthesia. So synesthesia is just when your senses are crossed. Mine, anything I smell and anything I hear is very visual. So when I'm taking advice, I can zone out just a little bit and I can put things in their places. And if it clicks in, then it clicks. And I can really see how much of it I have to kind of shave off or reshape, or what I need to move around, and make decisions about whether or not I want to make all of those other moves. So I guess the initial is the gut check. Do I actually want this person's advice? Am I going to, when I talk to this person, is it because I want to hear what they have to say so that I can try it out, or so that I know exactly what not to do? Because that was my role models growing up, were very great examples of what not to do. So I'm kind of good at working from their back sometimes. And then once I have that information, it is, does it click? Does it fit somewhere? Can I see it in my cloud? And if not, I put it in reserve and move on. Because as things shift and kind of the cloud shift and the pieces shift, sometimes room is made and it does fit in when everything else shifts. So I try to keep things in reserve too.
That's a great framework that I think can be applied to different brains, right? This idea of you can keep it in reserve. You don't have to take it right now. And time again, like the gut does come up here, like intuition, our gut. It's a source of data. And I'm sure you could give us like 15 links to actual proof of that is research backed. So if anybody's coming for receipts, just let us know.
Let's do it.
Research.
Yes.
All right. You've already mentioned that being a tech founder is challenging and that you're not afraid of a challenge. You're always pushing at the edge of growth and understanding and function. So right now in this season of BetterCEO and of Mina, the CEO, what's the hardest or most challenging part of your job? And what is just like the absolute best favorite thing that you get to do?
Sure. All right, let's get the challenge out of the way. The challenging thing is, really, honestly, the most challenging thing is being limited by capital. There's like a deep frustration there, because it's like, when we're talking about the constructs and the things that we've made up. And so when you're like making new things, it seems so weird to like have to stop and gather leaves to like put up on the counter to go, see, I can has progress. Like, I understand. Like, I get the function, and like, I understand. And also, it's like when you get to a point where you actually are moving, to have to like stop and to do that is frustrating. But on the other side of that, that is what it is. On the other side of that, it is so, actually, this is, or maybe I shouldn't say it, but this is what I was talking to my therapist about. I've always been solo. Like, I'm a solo founder. I spent, all of my previous companies, I was working by myself. With this, I just started bringing on a team. Like, it's exciting to have an idea and turn it into something and watch someone's face change as they use what you made for them. There is a completely different level of intoxication involved in going, here are the pieces. You make this, I'll do this, and then coming back and putting them together and see everyone light up over this thing that looks nothing like you had imagined at first, because it's imbued with the heart and soul and sweat and decades of experience of people you've only scratched the surface of understanding. That is getting chills. I'm starting to sweat. Like, I'm not fit for anything else, because nothing else, there's no other career, there's no other outlet that can do this. And it's just the best. It's just the best.
There's no feeling like it. You're absolutely right. I think that once you're a builder, you're a builder, you can't not build. Okay. We don't believe in shameless self-promotion. We know that there are going to be folks who want to know more about you, know more about BetterCEO, maybe even trade academic, like journal access. Holler at me if you've got a JSTOR. Just kidding. I already have access.
Right.
Just don't tell them. No, it's fine. Everything is done on the up and up. I'm going to let the record show that.
Yeah.
But back to you. Less about my misadventures. How can people keep up with you, get in touch with you, follow BetterCEO, use what you're building, and both light up from that experience? Where can we find you?
Awesome. And so you can find me at betterceo.app. Well, you can find the app at betterceo.app. You can email me at mina@betterceo.app, APP. And if you want just a lot of free coaching and a lot of, what I've been working on with people for years, I've turned that into a YouTube series. So I publish all over everywhere, predominantly on YouTube, every single Tuesday. You can sign up for an email list and get all of the updates and freebies and watch those videos, use the worksheets that go along with them. And I am here to help people master themselves, to preserve what makes them unique. So yeah, go grab all of that stuff. Email me if you'd like. I'm on LinkedIn and all of the social places, very accessible.
Awesome. We will drop links in the show notes to make that even easier for folks. And if you are driving or moving or just not looking at your screen, just go to betterceo.app and you will be able to find it all from there. Thank you for keeping that neat and organized. It's always lovely when a founder or really anybody makes it easy for the folks that they're serving and working with, find them, right?
Right.
None of us can do this alone, to your point. This was so much fun. Thank you for being on the show. I can't wait to keep up with you, try to keep up with you, and see where this amazing journey takes you next.
Katie, you're excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I'm flattered, honored, all the things.